Stumps on day 2 here at the SCG in the 5th and final Ashes Test. Australia is 2 for 166 in response to England's 384. It was an eventful day's cricket. Thankfully, we've got plenty more cricket ahead of us in this match, given the couple of 2-day finishes. And any manner of talking points and potential starting points, Ben Horne. But we might start with, and we do love a stoush here, the fiery exchange on field between Marnus Labuschagne and Ben Stokes, from which Stokes, I suppose, ended up having the last laugh when Labuschagne nicked off for 48.
Yeah, it sort of came out of nowhere, didn't it, really? I mean, it sort of felt like a pretty docile day, and then suddenly it exploded at the end there. I mean, we're completely guessing what happened, because the two people who spoke at the press conference, one, Joe Root, wasn't out there when it happened, and Michael Neser, the other one, was next into bat as the night watchman, and didn't really see what happened either. So we didn't really have any more light cast on what unfolded. It looked like Ben Stokes went pretty heavily at Marnus with some choice words that you don't need too much lip-reading experience to have understood. And also put his arm around Marnus as well, which, was certainly not, a violent act or anything like that. But, did raise questions about whether that's, breaching what should be happening out in the middle. But, there was a lot of fire there, and it seemed like Stokes had gone at Marnus early in his innings as well.
It seems as though, I think Stuart Broad touched on this on SEN, obviously a long-time teammate of Stokes and played against Marnus, and he seemed to suggest that England like to get in Marnus's head. They like to get him thinking about other things, plant little seeds of doubt, in essence to distract him. And I suppose you could say it worked, because only a few overs later, he was out edging and continues this long 2.5 years barren drought without a century. He was looking very good to that point, 48, very fluent batting with Travis Head, who we should note, and we'll probably get to him a bit more later, he's 91 not out. The specific moment, though, around that exchange, do you think it's good for cricket to see that sort of moment? I mean, is it a net positive, or do you think it is a bit unsightly?
No, I mean, I enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we should be getting too worried about that. I mean, it's, you want the characters, you want that tension, that fire. So, no, I thought it was good for the game, but it doesn't mean the match referee won't be, paying a visit to Ben Stokes tonight or after the game, because, it was in the grey areas, I thought. It sort of, when it's in a cuddle sort of thing, like when you watched it, you're thinking, "Oh, is this them making up?" But I don't think it was. I still thought it was Stokes kind of, sort of continuing on with things. So
it'll certainly be an interesting one to get Stokes' thoughts on at the end of the game, which could still be a few days away, as touched on earlier. In terms of the match situation, Australia 2 for 166. It could have been worse for Australia. In the end, look, England threw some wickets away, particularly Jamie Smith, who had awful dismissal, falling to Marnus Labuschagne, who was Australia's sixth seamer, which takes us into the broader question of, did Australia pick the right team? Now, there's still a very good chance to win this match, particularly with the way that the pitch wasn't doing a hell of a lot. But the fact that we end up seeing some off-spin from Bo Webster, Travis Head bowling several overs, seemingly to as much as anything to keep the over rate ticking over because they were falling behind and potentially at threat of losing WTC points. And then Marnus bowling seam up, admittedly getting a wicket. It did raise some questions about the team, which is itself spiralled into another day of queries about that team and from some high-profile people. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, Jim Maxwell on ABC, said it was not a great reflection on Australian cricket, and I agree. I mean, like, to have Marnus roll out as a sixth seamer in the attack, I mean, look, Australia may well win this series, and the selectors have a lot of credits in the bank. They've made some very good calls this summer, and I'd say Neser playing over Lyon in Brisbane was proved a correct call. But even if they win this test, I'm not sure you'll be able to say that this was the right team. I mean, I think Todd Murphy should have played. I mean, England making 380 in the first innings, and as you say, falling behind on the run, on the over rate as well. When you have the coach sort of saying that the WTC points is almost the key thing that this test is about. We've won the Ashes, that's done. It's about the WTC. Then that has to surely be a factor in the team that you pick in terms, over rates are a big deal. We've seen Australia cost themselves a place in this final previously over rates. So that's not a small point. I mean, we spoke to Michael Clark today. I liked his point that the pitch doesn't need to turn to justify picking a spin bowler. There's many other reasons why having a spinner in your team is justified. And unless it's a green 2-day pitch like we saw in Melbourne, I think it's the wrong call.
I wonder if they thought it was going to be, if they overthought. They saw some grass on the wicket and just got
But in that case, why not have a fourth seamer? What's this second all-rounder adding to the situation?
Well, I'm not saying this was the right call, but just to try to justify it, they might have been thinking, we think this is going to be a 2.5-day test. We don't need... let's lengthen the batting.
Yep.
Batting lengthened such a ridiculous degree that Nisa, who came in as night watchman, was actually filled on the arm. Seems to be okay late in the day from Ben Stokes as the light was dimming as well. He came in as night watchman rather than Scott Boland, who of course opened in the last test. That was because Australia batted so deep that they didn't want to have Michael Nisa come in at 10 and Mitchell Starc at 11, which would have been absurd. So hence Boland was the night watchman. So all manner of trickle down effects to this. One man though, in terms of the Australian batting order, whose spot is very shaky now, is Jake Weatherald, who failed again today, out for 21. Could have gone a couple of times before, then dropped twice. One particularly pretty regulation chance from Ben Duckett, who was having the ultimate Ashes tour from hell. Just the manner in which he keeps getting out the same, or very similar way. 4 times LBW this series, falling across. Just technical deficiencies looking pretty acute. And Mark Waugh, former Australian selector, here obviously commentating for KO Sports, made some pretty strong comments. And look, probably no great shock or an enormous leap of imagination to say he's probably got one innings, and who knows, will even bat again, to save his test career. Ben, what do you think of that whole landscape?
Yeah, look, I think Mark's 100% right. I mean, look, I'm glad that they gave Jake Weatherald the whole series, but let's be honest.
Hang on, you called for him to be dropped for this test.
I can change my mind. But look, I think, he's lucky in the sense that, Nathan McSweeney, didn't get that last summer. So it really depends. Weatherald's been lucky that the results have gone Australia's way and allowed the selectors to give him this time. I mean, when you look back to when the team was chosen, if they'd waited another, and I'm not saying they should have, but if they'd waited another week to pick that squad, I think Matt Renshaw would have just about got him, because he made 100 in his next Shield game. And, Weatherald, despite having a great season last year, wasn't exactly charging across the line. So the signs were possibly there before the first test even started. And, I thought he made some good contributions in those first 2 tests.
Brisbane in particular.
Yeah, might not show up so much on the scorecards, but, he did some important time out in the middle in those first couple of tests. But, look, the way things stand now, I don't know whether we'll see Jake Weatherald in the next test match in unfortunately, his hometown, Darwin.
It's interesting. We'll end up creating some... Here we are again. We might well have another bat-off in the back half of the Sheffield Shield season, which... It's hard to believe that we could still be in this spot, but here we are, and Matt Renshaw and Sam Constance and Campbell Kellaway and not Mitch Marsh anymore, he's retired from first class cricket, but all the other cast of characters, they'll be back in the game a bit. Also worth noting, Joe Root got 100, just a lazy 160. The cliche in English cricket has been you look up and Joe Root's on 30, and it was a bit today. I said to one of the English journalists behind me, you look up and Joe Root's on 156. He did so by stealth a bit. It's just classic Joe Root. Classy, no fuss, easily enough. And look, I'm glad for Joe Root because he's one of cricket's great ambassadors. He's a genuine good citizen, a fantastic person to have in cricket. 41 Test tons, and I think now that he's got, while obviously he's probably not going to win an Ashes series on Australian soil unless he comes back in 4 years' time, at least he's got that one victory last week, maybe one coming up in a few days' time here. But now that he's got 2 Test tons in Australian soil, even though one of them is a dead rubber, he's put that whole thing that he couldn't play in Australia to bed. I think history will suggest that he was coming up against a lot of very good fast bowlers. Yes, there were some issues there against the extra bounce, but more than anything, it was probably a bit of an aberration, an anomaly. And he is now, he'll end up averaging 40 in Australia, which is perfectly reasonable. Yeah, look, it certainly doesn't really enhance his reputation as an Ashes batsman in Australia too much, I think, because you do have to look at the series results, but certainly it enhances his overall picture as one of the great batsmen, not only of his generation but of all time. And I think that's a debate that would have happened around the ground today as it was happening in our little section in the press box. Joe Root now 41 hundreds. That's equal with Ricky Ponting. Only Jacques Kallis with 45 and Sachin Tendulkar with 51 are ahead of him. And then you have the debate about where does Joe sit amongst Steve Smith, Virat Kohli, Kane Williamson. And Crash Craddock's written a very nice comment piece about this for Code Sports, which you can go and agree with or disagree with. Do you agree with it?
I have Steve Smith a smidgen ahead, but I do think Joe Root is clearly number 2 in the list of the recent Big Four. And, you know, you legitimately have to talk about Joe Root as one of the best batsmen of all time. Now, he's done it in less test matches than Ponting. And, you know, he's indicating there that he may come back to Australia for another series when he's 39, 34, 39, 38, 39. And, you know, by then, who knows, maybe he's a century or two away from eclipsing Sachin Tendulkar.
That would be a great storyline if he overtakes Sachin Tendulkar here. He did have a bit of a bad back today, Joe Root, but he said it was just cramp and he should be able to play again tomorrow. So anyway, the match is very much alive. Plenty of talking points. Nice to be able to talk about a test that's still going after 2 days. And we'll bring more to you tomorrow.